Lords of Skulls. Story continued from entries for Defiers, Imperial Grav Tanks, Chaos Spawn, and Word Bearers. The huge, harrowing immortal stood at the displays, covered head to toe in ancient warplate, power armor from the dawn of the Imperium, but twisted and sharp, angular and aggressive. How he hated to be here, trapped in this room, directing his men from a screen, when all he truly wished to do was take his weapons and hack his way through his enemies. Sarvak the Butcher looked at his screens and directed his men via the Vox, via chevrons he moved around the battlescape. He was forced to do this due to the trickery of his adversaries, and he despised it. All had been going swimmingly. The invasion of this world a simple and direct, honest thing. War as it should be. They had not bombarded from orbit, had landed and begun their tour of terror. The blood flowed well. It flowed in rivers. The apes were herded and slaughtered, giving homage to the great god Khorne. Apes. He did not consider himself a human any longer. He was not sure he ever did. He may have had the same face, the same arms, the same opposable thumbs, the same ancient genetic stock as the beings most called humans. But oh, so long ago, Savrak had turned to the path of hate, the path of blood. He had turned to the worship of Khorne, Lord of Battle. A far better lord and master than that hypocrite who sat on his golden recliner on terror. For the great god Khorne rewarded those who fought for him, who killed for him, who exulted in blood. The Emperor had many weapons, then bemoaned that they had drawn blood, the weakling. Sarvak now had command of an ever-expanding warband. The glory of Gore was his, and many now flocked to his banners. For victory, for spoils, but most of all, for blood. Thus it was that he had riven across much of the system, slaughtering all there. But this last inhabited world of a half-dozen previously fully populated, here was a challenge he had to meet. As he and his men had struck, as his army had rolled across the world, the cowering populace of his former race had found an unusual champion. For out of gates across the entire globe, Eldar had appeared, and in numbers. They had first appeared like wasps, diving in and stinging him here and there, cutting off outlier forces, foraging parties and scouts. Their way of war was vexing. They darted in, punished, and then left again as swiftly, never standing to fight, never engaging fully. By the time he had mobilized his forces to intercept, they were gone. And this had been going on for days, until Sarvak changed the rules. The filthy Eldar scum wished to interrupt his activity. They certainly did not seem too concerned about the resident populace, as their strikes had always caused casualties in his ranks, but it was while they were at their art. The cowards attacked while his forces were engaged, but they did not try to draw them off or away from the apes they were slaughtering. The Eldar simply shot his men in the back while it was turned. Hence Sarvak fathomed that these black-clad warriors were from craftworld Ulthway. They were here to fight the forces of chaos, not protect the mewling herds. And as such, he then ordered the construction of a shrine to the great god Khorne. An icon where his might could be summoned and a gateway into his realm created. This would inevitably force the Eldar to come out and fight. And he was not wrong. Only days after the first rites had been enacted, the first few 100,000 or so to the blade and bolter and flames of wrath, their skulls added to the already towering edifice. And it began. Lightning-fast raids by skimmers and air superiority fighters on strafing runs had caused carnage amongst his ranks, but it had not stopped proceedings, and the Elder had worked out, as was intended, that their efforts did nothing more than add more skulls to the ever-expanding throne. But in the last few hours, since just before dawn in fact, the entire nature of the battle had shifted. It was now exactly where Sarvak wished it to be. Face to face, direct, honest, and honourable combat. Yet the Eldar were not as all considered them to be, for many times had he heard the same thing repeated again and again, like a universal mantra. The Eldar do not accept casualties lightly. Hurt them, and they will scurry off and hide again. Yet his forces had been reaping a toll from the Elder race, and they had not withdrawn. They had not backed down. They kept coming. Their skimmers transported their specialist troops all over the battlescape, so they could be applied at exactly the right place at exactly the right time. The skies were definitely theirs, the Helldrakes having been shot from the air with contempt by the red fighters that defied the laws of velocity and vector. The Eldar warlocks and witches, sorcerers of prodigious potency, were a bane. Even with the blessing of the blood god, who despised such trickery, many of Sarvak's forces had fallen to their powers. When they took the field, it was as if destiny itself was against the warband, as the Eldar played the strings of probability like virtuoso harpists. And now it seemed that they had decided to end the matter, for they had brought up weapons of immense power. Standing as tall as Imperial Knights, many men high, the Eldar war machines were deft and agile, accurate and aggressive. The pair of them now dashed from the flanks, sprinting like unencumbered acrobats, despite all of their size. In their wake were a rank of their tall, lithe war machines, akin to dreadnoughts in size and invulnerability. Their smallest dwarfed even Astartes, wielding swords and heavy weapons on shoulders. Behind them, more ranks and columns of similar constructs, but only slightly larger than a marine. Yet every one of them carried weapons of ancient power. A heavy gun that could fire a stream of energy that created tears in the warp when it hit, ripping anything it struck to pieces. And nothing could stand before them. Sarvak heard the blast doors behind him open. He vaguely remembered someone barking that an emissary had arrived, and he had snapped back to let them in. When he turned to see who had arrived, he instantly regretted his decision, as he saw the red of the word-bearer's armor. In walked a tall, pale, bald man with warplate every bit as ancient as his own. Better made, too. This one had been of a high rank even during the heresy, it seemed, or he had taken the armor from another, who was. But in either case, he was a threat to be considered. Sarvak knew why he was here. He had been before, been rejected before. But still he was here again. What do you want? I said no before, and I see no reason to change my position. I kneel to nobody. Like me, do not kneel before the great god Khorne. Did you forget that? Khorne does not require his adherents to kneel. He expects me to look his enemies in the eye when I take their heads. Well said, brother in faith. Well said. Just checking that your faith was well placed, not lip service to explain away a very mortal rage. I see you are one of the faithful still. Good. Why are you here? My master wishes you to reconsider your position. And I said before, I do not kneel to anyone. My master requires no bowing or scraping. He only wishes one thing from you, which would be only that which you do best, of course. Fight. My master wishes you to fight alongside him, not under him. To bring carnage to the galaxy together. He already has my services secured, and all of the word-bearers that brings. Which doesn't say much if I'm candid. The word-bearer shrugged. He also has Tarax Anarax of the Iron Warriors. Amanthus Enveros of the Night Lords. Enveros is a madman, even by the stakes of the Night Lords. Aye, perhaps so. But he has a warband every bit as large as yours, and talents that are not immediately apparent. Others are coming too. It would be a shame if we had to approach the Crimson Slaughter. We've been holding out for you, Sarvak. And what will your lord give to me? In a word, 1. Victory. Prove it! I was hoping you would say that. So if my master lends you the power to win this battle, right here, right now, thou wilt consider your position? Sarvak looked at him steadily and sternly, looking the word-bearer up and down while sneering. Ha! All right. If you can give me the power to stop those, said the warlord, pointing at the Eldar Knight constructs, then I am all his, he concluded with a mirthless sneer of challenge. Wonderful. Let us be about it then, shall we? May I? The word-bearer indicated the screens and then walked a few paces forward. The World-Eater warlord stepped sideways once, giving him space to approach the screens, but in perfect situ to view everything he did and intervene swiftly if need be. The tall Marine in red approached and waved a hand over a screen, and a large chevron of forces appeared out of nowhere. Sarvak looked on, but fixed a glare at the picked screen to confirm. There were indeed more forces on the field. Out of nowhere, hidden behind a glamour of some sort perhaps, a horde of screeching maniacs appeared. But that was it. Hordes of near-naked, bedraggled maniacs armed with one serrated knife each. Sarvak was about to scoff, but was silenced when he turned and saw the word-bearer now beaming at him, and holding up one finger of his left hand, indicating Sarvak should hold judgment for but one moment. An affront that would usually result in the hand being cut off and shoved down the throat of its owner, but one that he decided to belay for the scant moments it would take this force of worthless scum to be annihilated. Then he would take action. But the next moments were sublime and deeply spiritual to Sarvak. Deeply. For as the horde of scum approached the Eldar constructs, they all as one just stopped running, then gently dropped to their knees. Each then drew out their knife and dragged it across their own throats. Over 1,000 apes committing ritual suicide, the blood spraying from their necks as one, creating a near lake of hot red liquid. The Eldar ranks marched on oblivious to the performance, but a few hundred yards from their thrust. Sarvak watched on. Out of the huge expanse of blood, something was emerging. Something huge. And in a moment, it was there. Summoned from another realm, but perfectly armored in material from this. Hence it could maintain itself in the realm of matter. It was easily as tall as the Wraith constructs, yet it was wide and tracked. Sarvak now gazed in wide-eyed adoration at the only thing that might be able to coax such feelings from him. It was a lord of skulls. Its huge red form wasted no time and advanced at the double towards the forces of Ulthway. The Eldar noticed swiftly, and fire from their largest Wraith Knights flashed, but skidded off sickening distortions around the Lord of Skulls most often. One blast went into its shoulder, and a plume of smoke rose from the thing, but within only seconds, the rent was visibly reforming and closing again. The ranks of dreadnought-sized constructs fell back as the two knights advanced, one to either side of the Lord of Skulls. The Eldar Orent's right flank fired at it consistently, only few hits actually making contact, none truly stopping or even harming it. The other Eldar was armed with a huge power sword, easily the length of multiple men, multiple Marines, and of a size to threaten the Lord of Skulls. But as the thing moved up, rolling under the shots of the huge cannon on the left arm of the Lord of Skulls, it was clearly not expecting the speed and deftness of the Khornate war machine. As it rose in an attempt to slice its foe in half in one huge swing, the Lord of Skulls brought up its cleaver, a chain axe of a size to its form. The Lord of Skulls blocked not one, but a full 24 lightning-fast strikes of the Elder's sword. It begged belief that such colossi could move so swiftly, so deftly. It was maddening. But in the last few strikes, the disparity in aggression showed, as the Lord of Skulls now went on a return spree of strikes. Yet this time, it did not duck and bob like the huge Eldar thing of grace. It barreled forward on its tracks and literally drove the Eldar Knight back. Alas, the Knight slipped. Then the Cleaver came down, taking off one of its legs. Prone and mauled, the Eldar Knight then attempted to roll away, but the Lord of Skulls was faster. The construct rolled, but at its conclusion it had no limbs and no head, as 4 quick successive attacks from the Lord of Skulls tore it limb from limb. At its roller's end, there was nothing left but a smoking torso. The huge form of the Lord of Skulls then hacked it to even smaller pieces and rolled backwards and forwards over the carcass, before twisting and tearing off towards the remaining Eldar Knight, which then turned tail and fled. The ranks of wraith constructs left also began to turn to disengage, but not as large and thus not as fast. The Lord of Skulls simply rolled towards them at a frightening speed, and practically ignoring their desperate attacks back, it hacked, hewed and rolled its way through their lines. To all with the spirit sight, wisps of Eldar souls sprang temporarily into the air, as the stones and the bodies that supported them were crushed. Yet all of them wailed and winked out, as each was popped into the gullet of she who thirsts. Sarvak looked to the word-bearer and nodded in appreciation. It stuck in his craw to do so, but credit where credit was due. The worm had come through. And the word-bearer then indicated with a lofty flourish of his hand, "And this is now yours, Sarvak." "I haven't said I was joining you yet." "Oh, but you are true worshipper of Khorne. Your honor is all, as it should be. You stated that if my master assisted you in victory this day, you would join." "But victory is not yet guaranteed, word-bearer." "Aye, as you say." The word-bearer then took out his own cursed axe, flipping it in his grip, letting its weight play in his hands. He then looked up. "Let's just say, I think we have this one covered now, eh? Now, without those wraith constructs to ruin the day, what say you and I give homage to the great god Khorne together? Let us sign our pact in the only thing that matters, the blood of our enemies." The glint in his eye, the wish for battle, for blood. Sarvak saw that in this word-bearer, it was a bright and shining thing, a lust for the red near as hungry as his own. Sarvak nodded deeply and took out his own weapon, as they both turned and walked to the blast doors. Without the huge constructs, the Eldar were desperate to attack, but desperate to withdraw, and in those moments of indecision, the Lords of Chaos could strike and bleed them. The word-bearer was right, curse him. The time for complex maneuvers was over. Time to drench himself in blood. And Sarvak thought to himself, perhaps this crusade would be worth the effort after all. Welcome, gentle listener. I am Baldermort, your faithful servant, and I wish to introduce you to the forces, factions, and important units of the Warhammer 40k universe, the grim darkness of the far future, where there is no time for peace, there is only time for war. And today, we shall be discussing the very basics of one of the most powerful icons of the age, the single unit that more than any other epitomizes the grim darkness of the far future. Of course, I speak of that legendary beast called a Lord of Skulls. It is a thing with but one purpose, one remit, one duty: war and death. Now many will say that this is true of a myriad of things in the grim darkness of the far future, but I cannot agree. For in this one horror, the Lord of Skulls, we see the distilled perfection of millions of years of development. For they are the very pinnacle of demon engines, but more than this. I shall explain after the basic lore, so stick with me. And now, as usual, for the very basics, let us lean on existing wisdom. To quote, Lords of Skulls. Grinding across the battlefield on rumbling tracks, the Lord of Skulls towers over its terrified foes. The very ground cracks apart in its wake, yawning chasms gaping wide to vomit skulls on fire onto the battlefield. Given life by the raging spirit of a bloodthirster bound within its hull, and powered by the boiling blood of murderers, this unholy engine of war is death to all who stand before it. Its devastating guns reduce swathes of victims to ruin, drowning them in jets of red-hot gore, or burying them under rains of gnashing skulls. As it plows through the enemy ranks, the demon engine wields its roaring cleaver with a speed and skill that is horrifying in something so huge. Entire ranks of enemy warriors are swept away with a single swing. Tanks and monstrous beasts swatted through the air like toys. Even towering war engines such as Stompers or Titans are made to look clumsy and sluggish as the Lord of Skulls hacks off their limbs and tears open their armoured torsos amid blossoms of dirty flame. Few warriors can face the Lord of Skulls and live, for it is a machine of absolute destruction. Being the brazen vessel of bloodthirsters, many Lords of Skulls are worshipped by the demonkin, and followed into battle as living avatars of Khorne worship. Their track guards will be heaped with skulls and runic fetishes, offerings made by the warriors who charge to war in their shadow. Their every deed is met by howls of adulation from the blood-mad throng, the demonkin inspired to new heights of fanatical devotion by the Lord of Skulls' unstoppable rampage. The renegades of Wrath pay special heed to rumors of a Lord of Skulls rampaging across the material dimension, seeking it out and fighting in its wake, the better to see one of Khorne's masterpieces in action. Most warp entities rage against their incarceration in a demon engine, but there are those that see their cage as the perfect weapon. This is most common amongst bloodthirsters of the 8th rank, some of whom see the Lord of Skulls as a suit of armour, within which they may wage war on the denizens of real space. End quote. But it is not in just the mere presence of the Lord of Skulls that the horror is truly gained, nor in just its physical dimensions. It is in all of it, the entire package. For this, we must discuss some of the weaponry that it uses. So again, I will lean on existing wisdom to make sure I get it right, before we get to dissecting this monster. To quote, The Great Cleaver of Khorne. A Great Cleaver of Khorne is a demon weapon in the form of a massive chain axe that is wielded by the Lord of Skulls' demon engine. Like the Lord of Skulls that wields it, the Great Cleaver of Khorne is festooned with the remains of its victims, their skulls forever trapped within. The weapon is large enough that the Lord of Skulls can make use of it as easily as if it were a normal-sized melee weapon, and is capable of tearing apart tanks as if they were mere human heads. The Great Cleaver is fully capable of cutting entire vehicles into pieces, and taking out entire groups of infantry. It is a weapon forged for murder and rage, and it delivers the very same to its victims. Many meters in length, the design of each Great Cleaver is barbaric, and it features a gargantuan imitation of a chainsaw's sharp-toothed blade. When activated, the Great Cleaver will erupt with eldritch power, the teeth rotating so fast as to become a blurred edge. Immensely large and heavy, no mere mortal can hope to lift a Great Cleaver, let alone take one to battle. Only a Khornate Lord of Skulls is worthy enough, and powerful enough, to use it in combat. once this enormous demon engine has spent its cannon, or can no longer resist its sick desire to watch thick gouts of blood fill the air. The Lord of Skulls will rumble up close to its foe and begin using this weapon to devastating effect. Capable of causing severe damage to even the mightiest war engines, a great Cleaver of Khorne will easily rip through body armor or crack the carapaces of monstrous bioforms, and soft flesh underneath is instantly reduced to pulpy offerings for the god of blood. The Lord of Skulls then grinds forward, ready to absorb the remains of the victims into its enormous pressure tanks upon its back, where it will augment the boiling blood of murderers already contained within. The Hades Gatling Cannon. The Hades Gatling Cannon is a massive demonic weapon that is commonly used by the Lord of Skulls' demon engine, typically mounted on its left arm. The weapon is a large, multi-barreled Gatling weapon that is capable of shredding groups of heavy infantry with a hail of fire composed of its massive ballistic shells. The Skull Hurler. The Skull Hurler is aptly named, as this weapon hurls burning skulls of destructive force at its foes. The weapon's barrel is shaped in the form of a large metal skull, with the mark of Khorne emblazoned upon its forehead. The large skull that serves as the hurler's barrel is fitted with smaller skulls that are either fired out of the larger skull's open mouth, or the oversized skull itself can be fired out of the weapon, accounting for the weapon's potent explosive force. Gore Storm Cannon, Daemon Gore Cannon, and Ichor Cannon. These three cannons are large demonic weapons that are commonly used by the Lord of Skulls' demon engine, one of them being mounted on its front torso. All are placed in the center, as with the Gore Storm Cannon, and work with the same principle. A gout of nastiness explodes from it like fertilizer from a spreader, all across the landscape closest to the Lord of Skulls. The Gore Storm Cannon is believed to fire large gouts of boiling blood upon the demon machine's foes, boiling them alive. The weapon takes the form of a large yet short-barreled cannon. The Demon Gore Cannon unleashes a gout of burning filth at the Lord of Skulls' enemies. The weapon takes the form of a large, multi-barreled cannon. The Ichor Cannon. The Ichor Cannon spits great goblets of burning blood upon the demon machine's enemies. The weapon takes the form of a large cannon with a spiked maw. End quote. The Lord of Skulls. A horror to confront, as either a player or a painter. It is such a huge figure, the centerpiece of many a Khornite army, as it should be. For it is so much more than these simple tracks attempt to show. The Lord of Skulls is the very pinnacle of the demonic engine for a multitude of reasons. Firstly, the very spirit that animates the Colossus is a bloodthirster, and this is no small thing. Bloodthirsters are arguably the strongest and most potent of all demon kind. They may not have the subtlety of a Lord of Change, the guile of a keeper of secrets, the invulnerability of a great unclean one, yet they are still the most powerful. For theirs is the great god Khorne the Bloody, who sits on his throne are skulls. He was the first dark god to fully manifest in the warp, the first to howl his existence into the Sea of Souls. And it has been Khorne who has undeniably done best out of the descent of the galaxy into unrelenting, unremitting war. Some say Zinj comes in at a close second, and Nurgle may rise above all in the midst of one of his surges of power, when his infestations are sweeping across the galaxy, but he soon withers again when they run their course. And the Prince of Pleasure, Slaanesh, is despised by the Lord of Blood, nor is it powerful enough to survive a direct confrontation with its older sibling, Khorne. Yet Slaanesh always finds a way to bring another god into war against him, when he pushes too hard. So, as we have seen, Khorne is undeniably the present top dog amongst all of the dark gods of chaos, and the Bloodthirster is his most dangerous and vile form of demon prince. Thus the Lord of Skulls is driven, empowered, protected, and the vessel of one of the most powerful beings in the galaxy. when you add that the engine that contains it is powered by the very lifeblood of a host of sacrificial murderers, regenerates as it is damaged, its hate reforging it and tempering it with each strike that does actually penetrate its armor, a rarity to be certain. Yes, there are less glyphs and wards than one might see on some of the other gods' engines, as Khorne despises trickery and cowardice, and considers the use of sorcery to be anathema to he and his. Yet the mystic might that is inherent in just the presence of the being inside the vehicle is enough to make it the match and more of anything that cantrip or ceremony can create. And by being a bloodthirster of Khorne, the thing known as the Lord of Skulls is a direct conduit to the beating, burning heart of Khorne himself. It is why they attract such adoration and followers. The monstrous engine of carnage literally has the power of their god shining from its center. And its weaponry. If one looks at numbers and statistics, or merely hears the description of these weapons, then one can nod and sanguinely say, "Yep, that sounds nasty." But take just one moment to consider how these things manifest on the battlefield. Just one. Not as a general and tactical genius, divorced from the terror of the battlefield by being 10 miles or more behind the front. Imagine what it is to face the thing on the battlefield. To charge at a thing towering over you, reeking of the iron of blood, the chemical fumes of its fires, the acrid stench of the offal that powers its innards. To see skulls fired out of the beast that fly through the air and scream all the way, chattering their teeth as they go, yet all wreathed in fire, and when they strike, it is like a missile launcher has hit. The skull bites into you, gnawing with its teeth for a second before exploding, its sharp bones thrown in every direction, only to explode again on impact with anything more. Each explosion is not merely slithers of jagged razor-sharp bone, however. They are imbued with the power of chaos, of rage and hate. Thus when they explode, they tear anything apart on a spiritual level as well. These skulls destroy souls as much as they do the bodies that hold them. And that is just one of their weapons. If you get too close, then you are within range of its mighty Cleaver. And worse still, like any hero attempting to take out that gargantuan end-level boss, you may envision rolling under its blows to rise up and begin to whittle it down to size. Alas, if you do land even a palpable hit, the thing regenerates, its metal knitting together the instant your impact is over. And what will you do about the gouts of blood, or ichor, or burning filth that it vomits from its navel? Can you avoid that, its axe, its mighty tracks squashing you, while avoiding its cannons as well? If so, then surely you must be a Primarch. Personally, I would love for the Lord of Skulls to have a rule, whereas if it is destroyed, the bloodthirster that drove it then comes out to play. But we can only hope for such things, and it would, of course, depend very much on the amount of war power available in the area. If it were not saturated, of course, there would be no way for the bloodthirster to draw enough energy to create itself a corporeal body. But perhaps, if it were near a Noctilith crown, or other demonic gate into the warp. The digressions are many, it seems. My apologies. Back on track. And so we see that this, the Lord of Skulls, is indeed one of the most dangerous, diabolic and destructive things in the entire setting, no matter what its present rules on the board may say. And should you be a fan of comics, even the recent Warhammer ones, then please disavow of any dreams of taking out a Lord of Skulls by merely digging out two power fists and jumping up its armoured form. Unless your name is Marneus Calgar, your dreams are very likely to be dashed. Holy Throne, I do want one. But I don't play Chaos at the moment. Maybe if they were to redo the Berserkers, I would consider it. Maybe. And to end on a high point, look at this. Wonderful. I certainly hope that the author of this phenomenal model does paint it and does put those images online. because it goes to show, if GW don't make what you want, kit bash it. Words to live by, I can assure you. I have been Baldermort, your faithful servant. Hope you've enjoyed this brief introduction to the Lord of Skulls. If so, then please do consider liking and subscribing. If you do, then hit the notifications button, as I would not want you to miss out. If you see the worth in what we are doing, then do also consider joining our Patreon, or giving the video a share if that is beyond your present scope. It would be a great boon. Now, no matter what you do today, do try to make some time for fun. Toodaloo.